Everybody has different opinions. I don't claim to be the guru on all things business. I can only relate my experience, but I welcome a debate. It's a great way to get the comments lively on below the episode. So that's another factor that I look for.
You hear all the bull about marketing every day. Make your money in your sleep. My new offer is crushing it. My guru could beat up your guru. It's time to go right to the source and get the truth about marketing. With your host, the founder of copychief.com, Kevin Rogers.
Hey, welcome back to The Truth About Marketing, the show where we go deep with the actual experts to learn the real results of what works best and sometimes doesn't work best in their own marketing campaigns. Thrilled to welcome my guest today, Andrew Locke. How you doing, Andrew?
Good, Kevin. Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I'm ready to go deep.
Let's go deep. Andrew's a great marketer. One of the things I love about what you do, Andrew, is that you just created your own world here. You produce really high quality content on your web show and your podcast called Help My Business. And this is something I think I consider you an innovator in this field. I think you were doing, web TV long before it was sort of the thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously time flies in this world, but I think I was one of the first, certainly in the business world, to do it back in 2007. But it's exciting to see the growth of an interest in podcasting. Actually, right now, there's a huge resurgence, and a lot of people are discovering it for the first time. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, it sure is. And what's changed for you over the years of producing video?
I think a lot of things change. I mean, everything kind of goes through cycles, and just personally from my own experience, frankly, when I look back at my first episodes, I'm up towards 200 now, and the first ones kind of make me cringe because I realize how bad a presenter I was. But, I was still passionate about the topic, and I think the content was good. But so from that point of view, the more you do it, the better you can become. I really tried to focus on making it entertaining and engaging, as well as providing good quality content. So that's something that I've realized over the years is very, very important, especially to stand out from the crowd, because there's no shortage of podcasts out there now. For me, as you know, I do video as well, which kind of takes it to an extra level of complication. And, sometimes I wish it was simple with audio, but video is a good way to offer something a little different. I think the people resonate with podcasts to a greater extent now than they did in the past. We're seeing we're seeing. Let me start that again. In a lot of new cars, there's technology where people can listen to podcasts. Whereas before it was kind of like FM radio and a cassette, and of course I'm going back, but then we had CDs, and then we had MP3s, and interestingly now, of course, with everything being digital, for the first time, a lot of cars manufacturers are giving us the opportunity to listen to podcasts as one of the options. And that is just a phenomenal revolution. That's only going to obviously make things better for all of us that are doing podcasts. So very exciting. I love kind of how this process and industry is constantly evolving, constantly changing, and there's always new opportunities.
Yeah, that's a great point. As a note on that, are you familiar with the podcast called Startup?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great show if the listeners aren't familiar with it. It's one of the top business podcasts done by a former producer of This American Life, which is one of the most successful radio shows in podcasts. And it's a fantastic show where I can't remember the guy's name. You know it off the top of your head?
I forget, yeah.
Yeah, but he takes us through his journey very awkward journey in the beginning of starting up a company about podcasting, a podcast company where they're going to produce several shows and they're out, to win investors. And what was fascinating to me, that I didn't realize how few people really even know what a podcast is. The majority of your potential audience out there hears that word and goes, I don't know what that is. That's something I kind of know what that is, but I don't even know how to listen to one. Where do I even get to that?
Yeah.
And so you're right. I mean, we're just at the foothill of this incredible opportunity. And even though you scroll around iTunes and you see so many shows, I think it just means that should be encouraging to you and not discouraging, because it means two things. One, a lot of people are having a lot of success with it. And two, those are all opportunities for you to invite guests and be guests on those other shows.
I agree, yeah. Alex is his name, isn't it?
Yeah, Alex Bloomberg.
Bloomberg, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And in fact, probably like you, I'm a big fan of listening to other people's podcasts. I mean, I have, I guess, probably close to 10 that I listen to regularly, that I have on my phone, and listen in the car, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
And I guess that proves the point too, that there really is something for everyone. You don't want to do a Me Too podcast if you're thinking about it. You want to, everybody is a unique individual. You are the most, there's only one of you and your history, your background, your experiences, and so on. And so everybody can approach it from a different angle and bring something fresh and different to the table. And that's why I love listening to all these podcasts, because each one does offer something different.
Yeah, great point. That's right. And sometimes it's just you and the way you talk. Like you said, follow your instinct and don't just sort of steal somebody's line of questioning. I've seen that done quite a bit.
Oh, it's absolutely. It's a big trap to fall into is modeling your own podcast because you are a fan of someone else's. It's so much better to be authentic to who you are, your own style, your own personality, and let that evolve over time, and it'll just keep getting better.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Andrew, I'm going to ask you the big question here, but I definitely want to talk a little bit more about your video and how you plan them, because they are very entertaining and funny, but always full of meaty content. But I don't want to spoil any of the surprise, because I don't know the answer to this question before I ask it to people. So let's just dive into the big question of the show, which is, what is the one thing you did in your marketing that produced the most surprising results?
Well, when I tell you the answer, I guess in some ways it's obvious, and I'll explain it because I don't want you to be disappointed with my answer. For me, unquestionably, it was creating a video podcast, because there's so many different methods of marketing out there, as we know. And, everybody kind of says, do this, do this, do this. And it's overwhelming. I mean, what do you pick? I mean, just to keep a presence on social media alone could easily be a full-time job. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, right.
And so you have to be selective. And when I think it was an event that Yannick Silver put on many, many years ago, in fact, one of his first events, that really kind of solidified my path down this road of making video podcasts my main marketing method. And the reason I did that, for me, the reason I made that decision was I very much analyzed who I am, what my skill set was, and people may or may not know that my original background was actually in the entertainment industry. First as a video cameraman or TV cameraman for the BBC, and after that producing live events and also managing celebrities. And so I was very, very much immersed in the world of TV, ever since I really left school.
Yeah.
So that was something I knew inside out. I mean, I knew inherently how to produce a good quality TV show. And so when I started to think about, what could I do? What should I do in this world of online business, which is something that I really wanted to pursue and delve into, I realized that, first of all, I had great business knowledge from the management side of what I'd been doing, managing celebrities and so on. But on the other side, I knew how to produce TV. So for me, once I really thought about it very carefully, even though video podcasts were very much in their infancy and just starting to emerge, I realized, this is a perfect fit for my background, my skills, my interests. And I knew that I could bring something fresh to the table that people would, resonate with. And within 6 months of launching it, the show, surprises me now, but it's a beautiful thing. It rocketed to the number one spot in iTunes above all these well-known businesses and organizations like Harvard Business and Advertising Age and Business Week. So I think that in itself, I don't say that to boast. I'd say it to show you that anything is possible, I was just this immigrant. No one knew me coming over from England. And, created a podcast from scratch that went to that number one spot on iTunes in 6 months. Anything's possible, just go with your gut and use the things that you are good at. That's the biggest thing, I think.
I love it. Now I'm curious, because some people might say, well, you had all this insight and experience working in television, but it was behind the scenes.
Right. Well, that's an interesting thing. I kind of alluded to it earlier, in as much as I was behind the scenes, so that was something that I knew how to do. But going in front of the camera, I was a nervous wreck. Looking back, I don't think I did a great job in those early episodes. But I was, the main thing was I was very passionate about the topic, and I think that passion comes through. And I think one of the other things to remember with video podcasts is no one expects or even wants a very slick, polished, Ryan Seacrest style presentation. I love Ryan. He's great on TV, but video podcasts are supposed to be almost, a little bit raw, and you really want that close connection with the audience. And I think honestly that's one of the reasons why they're so effective, because they engage multiple senses. And ultimately in any type of relationship, you want people to know, like, and trust you. And podcasts really, in my opinion and experience, accelerate that process of getting people to know, like, and trust you. And so I think that is the reason why they are such an effective medium for marketing.
Yeah, that's so great. It's exciting. And again, people can go to find your show at helpmybusiness.com. Is
That's
that correct?
It, yeah.
And
it's free episodes over there. And
and just great stuff. Like you said, 200 now that you've produced. And every one of them, I just love the pace of them, because you're taking your time. It doesn't feel rushed and hurried, but there's never a wasted second. I'm never anxious. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of you to say that, Kevin. I do put a lot of effort into those shows. It's very easy to just put something out there, but I really have developed a process for that. I try and kind of vary it up a little bit to keep it, to have the surprise factor there. I always try and make them useful, relevant, interesting and engaging. A lot of British humor in there, very dry humor, which is, right up my street. And, occasionally I do episodes on the road. I've done episodes from Disney World, from Dubai, from Singapore, from other countries in Asia, which is always fun. I do, interview style episodes. I've done episodes where I've had a studio audience, which was absolutely a real blast to interact with an audience live. I've done a few of those. So I just have fun with it, but it is very much a process that I've developed, as you kind of mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that process. And first thing I'm curious about is what qualifies as good subject matter for you?
To me, it's anything that, first of all, contains a story, because audiences love stories. I mean, I know that you are very familiar with the importance of stories. And so I always think, can I present this and wrap it in a good story, an engaging story where people can't kind of guess the outcome? So that's one thing. Another factor that I look for is it controversial? Controversy works like a treat. For me, I love it when it kind of starts a good debate. And often I'll say to the audience, maybe I've had an experience and I express my opinion about that. But I'll always say, do you agree with me? Or do you have a different view on this? Because I welcome that debate. I mean, obviously we want to keep it civilized, but, everybody has different opinions. I don't claim to be the guru on all things business. I can only relate my experience, but I welcome a debate. It's a great way to get the comments lively on below the episode. So that's another factor that I look for. I tend to be wary about news items that are ultra what's the word, that sort of have a time limit, because some of my shows are recorded a few weeks in advance. I'm cautious about that, but there are kind of news stories that tend to hang around a little bit more. So, for example, if I was to talk about Donald Trump in the context of the candidacy, I know that that's got a long shelf life. So obviously I'm not. It's not a political show, but I may mention something in a business context. For example, that's actually a good. It is a good example because he does have a business background, so I may draw on something there. Right. And of course, everybody knows that he's in the political, the race for the presidency right now. So that would be an example of something that I know that I could use without having to worry about it being weeks ago by the time the episode airs.
Right. I see. That's an interesting time frame, because maybe a year from now or 2 years from now, it might feel a little dated, but the lessons would surely be evergreen.
Absolutely. And, I'm always thinking about the audience. I'm always trying to bring something fresh to the table. I don't want to just regurgitate, the same kind of content that other people are doing. Right. And, I like to challenge myself, frankly. I mean, I am a recovering perfectionist. And, so because of that, I'm always want each episode to be the best it can possibly be. So I have to have a balance because I've got to get it out there.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd love to abuse our relationship and ask you a few kind of practical questions about video, because I'm sort of sitting in a place right now where I want to do more video, and I'm realizing through mistakes like soundproofing this little studio I'm building, for instance, just like covering the entire wall with it and learning that that's not necessary. You can scatter these things about and for half the price. So what are some, like, what does it take to produce something that looks good? I think about Marie Forleo, if you know Marie. And again, it goes to your point of just start, right? But in the beginning, her show was pretty raw. She always looked good and her content was always great, but now she's got this everything's perfect, pro lighting and set and everything is just top notch.
She does a great job. I think to your point, it is important to start and get it out there. Just as my shows early on, were definitely, I didn't feel like I was, I felt that they could be better, but it is important to start and get it out there. Better to be prolific than perfect. Mm-hmm. There's a few things that I would consider to be the essentials, and they also kind of tie in with the common mistakes that people make. So one of them is to have sufficient lighting. Mm-hmm. So you also don't want to mix lighting sources. So, for example, if you have a nice bright room, maybe a big window or French doors or things like that, then you can film in that environment and just use natural light, or outside too, which is great too. I mean, there's nothing to beat nice bright outside lighting. If you are in kind of a dark place, or you live in a dungeon, maybe you own a castle and the only place that you have is the dungeon to film. We don't know, do we? I mean, everybody's different.
Just torches on the wall.
Right, exactly. So obviously then you got to rely on, or maybe you live in Nebraska, where it never gets the sun. So you got to introduce artificial light. And the easiest way to do this is to go down your local hardware store like Home Depot or whatever, store like that, and buy one of these big construction floodlights, like a 250 watt minimum or 500 watt, that kind of thing is perfect. And what you want to do is point it up to the ceiling so that you get the bounced light down, because if you point it at you, first of all, it's going to blind you, and secondly, it will be too harsh. You'll just kind of get blown out, and you won't be able to see the detail in your face. So by bouncing it up against the ceiling, it diffuses the light, it raises the overall level of the light, and you'll get a much, much better quality picture just by doing that one simple thing.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
The second thing, and again, this ties in with a mistake that a lot of people make, is the audio quality. So it doesn't matter what camera you have, you cannot rely, even in the highest quality video camera, you cannot rely on the built-in microphone. You must plug in an external microphone. Now, the easiest way to do that is what they call a tie clip or lavalier microphone, which is the type that you see newscasters, where it just clips on your clothes, either on a lapel or on the top of a dress. You want it basically as high as possible. A mistake that people make is to put it too low, like in the middle of their chest is too low. And that in itself will dramatically improve the quality. There's very interesting research been done about how people perceive or judge the quality of video content. And what they found, researchers, is that the single biggest component that people will judge the overall quality on is audio. I guess audio is like the red-headed stepchild of video production, because it's always it's always the piece that's overlooked. And the reality is that if someone watches a video and they there's a poor quality picture, maybe it's grainy or wobbly or that kind of thing, they will tolerate it if the content is good. But if the audio is poor quality, if it's there's a lot of hissing in the soundtrack, or if it's muffled, or just generally if they can't hear properly, what's the point in watching it? Because the audio is the piece that you need in order to understand the content, and that's why audio is so important. Right. So having that external microphone is critical to any type of recording that you do.
Man, great tips. Yeah, just some things you said in there helped me so much. Like, I totally guilty of putting the lav mic halfway down my chest, thinking I'll keep it out of the shot. Yeah. But compromising
right. So
quality,
best way to do it, if you're concerned about, which you obviously are, about not having it appear in the shot. I didn't realize you were so vain, actually, but well,
I'm realizing now it's a dumb thing to even worry about. Nobody's staring at that.
The best thing to do actually is to tuck it under your shirt or whatever it is you're wearing, and then just poke it out the top and clip it onto the the top of your shirt or the lapel, or like I said, if it's a lady, then the top of a dress, the collar line, if you want. That having it high like that will actually give you a much better quality result.
Thank you. Yeah, great tips. So, and then let's talk a little bit about what are the lengths of your shows? Yeah, it's interesting because
I've experimented with different lengths over the years, and much like copywriting, there isn't one single length that is the definitive standard that you must adhere to. it's really a principle that as long as you're engaging with the viewers and you're keeping their interest, then the length isn't critical, within reason. So,
Right.
I've done shows that, just 5 to 10 minutes. Typically, the average length I would say is probably about 15 minutes, but I've certainly done shows that are about half an hour too. Some of the interview shows go a little longer. And interestingly, one trend that I have seen is a willingness for viewers to want longer shows. And one tip that I give people too is veer on the side of keeping it shorter to begin with, and then as the audience, as you build the audience and you get the know, like, and trust factor, then you can start introducing longer episodes, and they'll stay with you. And the reason for that is because when people are exploring and discovering new shows, often they will look at the length of them. And if they see a show that's like 45 minutes long, or, things like that, it does tend to put people off listening to it for the first time. So, if you keep it short, like 5 to 10 minutes, it's kind of, I can listen to this and, without kind of having to worry about, is it going to be a good use of my time? So that's the principle.
Right. Yeah, because and sometimes even if people are enthused to hear what you have to say, they'll look at that proposition and say, man, I just don't have time, or I'll get to that over the weekend or something. And as we know, oftentimes they just might forget to come back. And one thing I do with this podcast is I have two varieties. I do the interviews, which are typically about 30 minutes. And then I put out a second episode every week that's under 10 minutes. So that, which is just me giving a tip. And that way I feel like that's an opportunity for people who, aren't sure about me yet, which, they have every right to be skeptical, to say, I'll give this guy 8 minutes to prove himself. And then,
that's very smart.
Lock in that way.
I'm actually doing something similar in that I'm also producing a audio podcast. It's in the works. It's actually based on a book that I wrote called Big Lessons from Big Brands, which was actually a spin-off of a segment in the show. And I've got 92 chapters, and each of those chapters is going to be a couple of minutes, just a very condensed tip. And with it being audio, that kind of gives me another opportunity to reach people that prefer audio podcasts, because some people do have preferences. Some people like to listen, some people like to view, some people like to read, different ways of consuming media. That's a danger. If we really love video, we tend to think that everybody else loves video, or, with any of these mediums, but everybody's different. So it's good to have different, kind of, that's an advanced step, of course. It's very difficult to do all of these things when you're just starting out, but once you've got the systems in place, it's good to offer different types of medium for people to consume for that reason. Everybody's different.
Yeah, it's a great point. And you can cross-purpose all of your content. Video obviously is the most advantageous because you have the video, then you can just pull off the audio. That's done, and then you can transcribe the audio.
Absolutely,
and now there's your blog post.
Great tip, it's leveraging content in that way is very, very smart thing to do. Yeah.
Well, great stuff, Andrew. I really appreciate you making time for us today. I know you had this great, really interesting career back in the UK. If I have this right, you worked closely with what would be the equivalent of Johnny Carson
or Jay Leno. He was on primetime BBC. Remember, we only had 3 channels at the time, so the audience numbers were crazy. I mean, 30 million people for a show. Each episode was very common, and it was a amazing thing. I mean, I really, just like you, kind of pinch yourself working with John Carlton, I felt the same way with this guy because I grew up watching him on TV. And what happened was my first information product I had created, and I knew that this guy lived locally, so I contacted him, and I was kind of like a long shot, but I was going to ask him if he would consider endorsing it. And he said, well, come over and we'll talk about it. And so, he invited me over for lunch, and so I'm sitting there like a nervous wreck.
Wow.
Literally grew up watching this guy for decades on the TV. Since I was a very young boy. And, he looked at what I'd created, and he said, it's good, but I think it could be a lot better. He said, would you like me to help you? So, would I? Oh, my goodness.
Holy smokes.
So,
wow.
Actually, what happened was I ended up spending about 2 days a week with him because at this point, he was just starting to semi-retire from the show. And for about a year, he effectively mentored me. From that point onwards, I kind of worked creatively with him, brainstorming marketing ideas and so on. And then fast forward a couple of years, through a weird set of circumstances, his longtime manager passed away from cancer. And out of the blue, one day he'd said, "How would you feel about being my manager?" And so, you can imagine the thrill that was, and just such a fun time, such a fun experience. It really accelerated my growth in the world of business, and I'm forever grateful for it. So I guess if there's a lesson, it's don't be afraid to reach for the stars, because what seemed like something that would be really impossible turned out to be something that was changed my life. I mean, it really did.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I sort of took from that story as you told it was, man, you just never know. You have to reach out, and what were the chances that man, this superstar would not only respond to you, but offer to help? I'm sure you couldn't have imagined in your wildest dreams, but yet there you were in his living room.
I think a lot of people
hearing this offer,
view celebrities as unapproachable, and sometimes they are. Honestly, everybody's different. But I think with him, the reason he responded was, first of all, the timing was right because he was just starting to scale back, and secondly, I think he saw a lot of himself in me, just being honest about it. I think, and he expressed that too. He saw my entrepreneurial drive, and he thought, here's an opportunity to kind of give back and support someone that he, he saw a lot of his own qualities, I think, as a young, because he was very much a hustler, to kind of get where he was. Yeah. So I think he saw that in me, and obviously too, we connected. We had a good rapport. It wasn't a one-sided relationship. I was always thinking about what I could do for him too. And, it just worked on a number of levels.
That's fantastic. Boy, that's a huge takeaway. All right, Andrew, I want to respect your time. I could talk to you all day. Really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, it was fun.
I hope we can do it again sometime.
Thanks for the invitation.
All right, so everybody check out Andrew at helpmybusiness.com. Reach out, say hello. As you just heard, magical things can happen when you do that. But you'll enjoy the episodes and learn a lot about what it means to produce both highly valuable and entertaining content by seeing Andrew in action over there. And if you want to learn more about copywriting, meet the best copywriters in the industry, get formulas and templates for writing better, faster, join us over inside the membership area of copychief.com, and we'll look for you there. Thanks again, Andrew. We'll talk soon, buddy. Hey, thanks again for listening to the Truth About Marketing podcast. If you like this show and you think other people would like this show, the best way to spread the word is by reviewing and rating the show in iTunes. Just log in, click review, leave a big old fat 5-star review, and let everybody know that you dig the show so that they can dig it too. To get all the links and resources we mentioned on today's episode, please go to copychief.com/TAM, as in Truth About Marketing. And if you'd like to Learn more about how you can improve your sales copy with templates, formulas, coaching, feedback, or hiring a pro. Do all that on the inside of the members area of copychief.com, and I will look for you there. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.